Picture this. You're out for a walk, minding your own business, when suddenly you see something small on the ground. At first, you think it's just a pile of leaves, maybe a piece of trash. But then you take a closer look and you realize it's alive. It's breathing, barely. That's exactly what happened to Dylan one random afternoon. Just an ordinary day, nothing special, until he spotted something tiny and fragile lying motionless on the pavement. A baby possum. It wasn't moving much. It didn't even look alive. Most people probably wouldn't have noticed it, and if they did, they might have just kept walking. But Dylan isn't like most people. He's always had a soft spot for animals. He's the kind of guy who stops traffic to help a turtle cross the road. The kind of guy who puts out water for stray cats in the summer. So, when he saw this helpless little creature, something in him just couldn't walk away. Now, let me ask you this. What would you have done? Be honest. Would you have stopped? Would you have picked it up? Or would you have thought, well, nature will take care of it, and gone on with your day? No judgment, just something to think about. Dylan didn't hesitate. He scooped up the tiny possum and held it in his hands. It was cold. Way too cold. It wasn't making a sound. And honestly, it didn't look like it was going to make it. But Dylan had to try. He had no idea how to take care of a possum, but that didn't matter. He just knew he had to do something. So he took it home. The first few hours were nerve-wracking. He tried warming it up, but it just laid there, barely responding. He searched online for advice, but let's be real. How often do people post step-by-step guides on reviving half-dead baby opossums? He found some basic tips, but nothing could prepare him for how hard this was going to be. He decided to call her Little Miss. Seemed fitting for such a tiny, delicate thing. And from that moment on, she became his responsibility. Every 2 to 3 hours, day and night, Dylan fed her. He had to wake up multiple times a night, even when he was dead tired, just to make sure she got enough to eat. He'd carefully hold the tiny syringe up to her mouth, praying she'd take in even a little bit of food. He'd watch her breathing, making sure it didn't slow down too much. He'd check her temperature, making sure she wasn't getting too cold again. And it wasn't just a couple of days of this. It was 5 weeks. 5 exhausting, stressful, emotional weeks. Can you imagine that? Waking up every few hours, barely getting any sleep, just to make sure a tiny possum survives? I mean, think about the last time you had a bad night's sleep. Now imagine doing that for over a month. And not for a pet you chose, but for a wild animal you just happened to find. But here's the thing, he never complained. Because with each passing day, Little Miss got a little stronger, and that made it all worth it. Dylan made sure to weigh her every day. Just a tiny loss in weight could mean something was wrong, and every time she gained even a single gram, it felt like a victory. The goal was always to release her back into the wild. That was the plan. That's what you're supposed to do with rescued wildlife. You don't keep them, you help them, and then you let them go. That's just how it works. But Little Miss had other ideas. She wasn't like other opossums. She wasn't scared of Dylan. She wasn't eager to run off and explore. In fact, she did the opposite. She clung to him, literally. Anytime he held her, she'd wrap her tiny arms around him, like she never wanted to let go. And when he put her down, she'd find her way back to him. Every single time. Now, what do you do in a situation like that? Do you force her to go back into the wild, or do you let her stay where she clearly wants to be? Dylan struggled with that question for weeks, but deep down, he knew what had to be done. No matter how much he loved her, she wasn't meant to be a pet. She was a wild animal. She deserved freedom. So, one day, he took a deep breath, carried her outside, and set her down. He watched as she hesitated for a moment, and then she was gone, just like that. Disappeared into the trees. That should have been the end of the story, but it wasn't. 9 hours later, something brushed against his leg. It was little Miss. She had found her way back to him, climbed right up his leg, just like she always did, like nothing had changed. And at that moment, Dylan knew this wasn't just some wild animal he rescued. This was family. From that day on, she never left his side. She had her little quirks. She was obsessed with blueberries, loved Dylan's hat, always tried to steal it when she got the chance. And the weirdest thing, she seemed to love his singing. Every time he started humming or singing a tune, she'd perk up, almost like she was listening. And she proved something else too. Opossums get a bad reputation. People think they're dirty, that they carry diseases, that they're pests. But little Miss was clean. She took care of herself. She showed Dylan, and everyone who met her, that opossums are just as special as any other animal. Dylan's whole life has been about animals. He grew up surrounded by them, studied biology, even spent time in Africa working with wild animals. But nothing prepared him for little Miss. She changed everything. Because of her, he ended up rescuing more opossums. Because of her, he saw animals in a whole new way. She started out as a tiny, weak creature fighting to survive, and she ended up teaching Dylan what real love and dedication look like. Every time he looked at her, she looked back at him with this expression, like she knew, like she was grateful. And maybe, just maybe, she was. Stories like this remind us how much we can learn from animals. They don't talk, but they show us so much about kindness, about trust, about love. And if this story touched you even a little bit, then you'll love what we share here. If you want to hear more stories about the incredible connections between humans and animals, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. There are so many more stories waiting to be told, and we'd love to share them with you. And who knows, maybe one day you'll find your own little Miss.